something's wrong with the reality of this. There's maybe a couple of drop shadows missing. There's a shadow that's probably needed around the outside here just to lift it off the background. Well, that's very, very easy to do. Just come down here to the layer effects option in the layers palette. Go ahead and choose drop shadow. And when we do, we don't even need to see the layer style window. Let's just pull it out of the way. You can click anywhere inside the image and pull that drop shadow around to wherever you want it to be. So I just want to make sure it's visible underneath, but slightly projected. So it looks like the screen is actually held off maybe a foot or two from the side of the building. And then if necessary, just come back into the palette and slightly reduce the drop shadow effect. So it looks a little bit better. But the most important thing I'm seeing here is that there's no shadow that appears across the image. We see this line that goes down, obviously a shadow from another building. We need to have that across the screen as well. Well, that's very easy to do. What we'll do is come down to the Layers palette and temporarily turn off the visibility for Layer 1. That's so then we can see the exact line that this shadow takes up. What I'm going to do is then create a brand new layer down here in the Layers palette, and then get the lasso tool. That's very simply done by hitting the L key on the keyboard. And I'm just going to hold down the Alt key or the Option key again, and simply click and let go, keeping the Option key held down. You'll see as I move my cursor, I'm now defining a line that the lasso will take up, and I'm just going to follow the exact dimension here of the shadow down the building. Now, keeping the Alt or the Option key held down, I'm going to click again. Let's come up towards the upper right-hand side here. Let's click again. Just give ourselves plenty of room. Click again, and then just point yourself anywhere towards the finish, but just simply let go of that key, and it will close up the mask for you. Now, this has created a marquee selection, which we can now simply fill with black. Very easy to do by holding again the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and hitting the backspace or the delete key to fill with foreground color. And you'll see that's very simply applied a solid fill. Now deselect that marquee, because what we need to do is obviously gently blend the edges of this by applying a blur to it. So let's go back up to the filter menu. Once again, go down to blur and choose a Gaussian blur. And that will give us the same settings we had before. Let's just pull this into the window so we can see it. Try and get it to roughly match what's going on in the background. You can play around with different settings there. It's totally up to you. I'm going to go for about 5 pixels. Looks fairly realistic to me. Say OK. And then down in the Layers palette, let's turn back on the visibility for Layer 1, the one that has the TV screen on it. Obviously, we need to have this now masked out so the shadow area we've drawn only appears where the TV screen appears. That's done through 2 very simple clicks to apply a layer mask. First thing we need to do is make a selection of the plasma screen area. Simply done. Hold down the Control key or the Command key on the Mac and click on the icon for Layer 1. See what happens is it draws a marquee based on the transparency of that particular layer. That's our first click. The second click is making sure that Layer 2 with the shadow on is still active. Come down to the bottom of the Layers palette and click on the Layer Mask icon to apply that shape as a layer mask to the shadow layer that's above it. All you got to do now is come up to the opacity option, fade the transparency down to whatever value you want to see. I'm going to go for around 45% there. That looks pretty good to me. If I now scroll the image back across, we can see the entire finished effect. I'm even going to hit the Tab key at this point just to get rid of all the palettes. We can now see our real depth of field and perspective shot done by very simple distortion of an image on the left-hand side, applying realistic shadow over it to make it look like it's really part of the shot, and some very simple blurring techniques and layer masking here on the starfish to really pull this entire shot together.